final study for today is Natalie's study, and it's about looking at the positive impact of strategic planning on cohesiveness and organizational performance. And I thought this was very interesting. The question that they asked here were, does an understood and well-implemented strategic plan and the process leading up to it lead to greater cohesiveness, and even in cognitive diverse organizations? And does a cohesive unit lead to better performance for the organization in general? And this study was conducted using 493 surveys from emergency room staff at 105 different hospitals. Every hospital was located in the US, and they were in diverse socioeconomic regions. And to further ensure diversity, various members of different roles in the emergency room departments were also surveyed, from doctors to nurses and so on. The surveys included a 7-point Likert scale, and they asked questions to gather information regarding cognitive diversity, cohesiveness, and strategic planning. The performance was also evaluated through each hospital's clinical outcome index, and control variables such as hospital size or age were also taken into consideration. And so the real question here, I mean, that's just interesting, is, when you have a diversity of thought, diversity of ideas, does that lead to, how does that impact your performance, and how can planning and strategic planning impact that? And so what they found here is that cognitive diversity in general can have a negative relationship with cohesiveness, since a variety of thoughts, beliefs, feelings can often cause conflict instead of innovation. Except, and the interesting thing here is that the process of strategic planning can improve cohesiveness for the organization. And this specifically can lead to improved performance overall, even with high cognitive diversity. And so this may in general lead to, happier, more collaborative, and less conflict-riddled environments at the workplace. As well, organizations with improved cohesiveness and cognitive diversity see the value of diversity. And this is something the authors mentioned in the study, that a cohesive unit working together and using various backgrounds, thoughts to achieve the strategic goals of the organization, they notice the effect and the positives that diversity can bring to the workplace, in this specifically diversity of thought. And so an important takeaway that Natalie came up here is that understanding diversity is absolutely a value, but it can also create conflict. Finding ways to encourage the positives of diversity and finding common ground for employees, and in this case, kind of coming together through strategic planning and goals, is absolutely critical to any organization. And this leads to reduced conflict and overall a more positive work environment. So yeah, that's what this one is about.
So interesting. So this cognitive diversity meaning just differences in the way people think, or their backgrounds or experiences, or?
Yeah, I took it to mean, and based on what Natalie wrote about it, is that it's, it can go from diversity of thought to ideas, like things that can spur innovation if they're done well. It makes me think of like task conflict versus, and that can come up when you have difference of idea.
So in the absence of strategic planning. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, cognitive would cover behavior, thoughts and feelings, right? So the difference of having all those.
The diversity of styles and stuff. So the lack of strategic planning in a cognitively diverse environment could lead to conflict, but with strategic planning, it can create more cohesion, which increases performance. Is that the sort of general takeaway? How did they define strategic planning in this case? Do you know?
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now.
Like, how do they measure that? I mean, it'd be very interesting to see, like, if they did an intervention, strategic planning became an intervention, and seeing how that affected. But in terms of a self-report like this, it's still interesting. It's just not as, I guess, probably not as powerful.
Yeah, I'm also wondering, like, how they define strategic planning and who's included in that planning, right? Because I think that has a large effect on the consequence of that planning, right? It's like if everyone's involved, or if it's just leaders, or.
But how inclusive was the plan?
Yeah. But I do like that this, I mean, I think that we all are aware of this, that diversity can both be a factor in conflict and also help kind of manage and dismantle different conflicts that are occurring. But I like that it points this out and uses strategic planning, or just like the mindfulness and intentions of how you look at diversity and what you acknowledge, whether it be the similarities, differences, how that has plays a big role in kind of the overall outcome.
Yeah, the work on diversity and conflict is really interesting. I mean, because you see that going both ways, where it's like they've done studies where more diversity and various different types of diversity like can lead to conflict if it's not properly managed in an inclusive way, and if it's done right, it could actually lead to a lot of benefits for the organization, performance-wise, decision-making.
Yeah, I think there's studies out there too that show it's greater benefits because of the innovation that different ideas and different, like, that cognitive diversity brings to the table. It's absolutely going to be greater benefits. It's like the middle process of
is it done yeah, exactly. Is it done properly? Yeah.
And to answer your earlier questions, strategic planning, at least past research describes it as a sequence of logical activities that define a unit's mission, long and short-term goals, as well as its implementation of plans. And so I guess that's how they defined it. I can see what they.
So maybe they have some like scale that kind of measures the levels of strategic planning in an organization or something.
Yeah, that's my thought. Let me.
This kind of relates to a lot of the other research updates that we've discussed about diversity in the workplace, and how there has to be strategies put in place from management and from leadership in order to really like work through and find the benefits. So yeah, this is great.
Yeah, and the empirical research on diversity and performance, I think, supports intuitive thoughts, which is, if it's done correctly, or if it's managed correctly and it's an inclusive environment, like, how could you not have better decisions if you have more people with different experiences and different types of information all coming together to collaborate? And then you have a wider range of information to go, okay, now we can make a better decision.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And so I keep bringing it back to the strategic planning thing, but I found it, and it's they're asked to answer such statements as, in our department, employees understand and put a lot of emphasis on our mission statements, or in our department, employees understand and put a lot of emphasis on our long-term goals, or our annual goals. So that's what they'd answer, and they answer on a Likert scale to those statements.
So like, it sounds like very like high level kind of overview on clarity about our goals, our mission,
Right.
Yeah, and the alignment to them, like most companies have mission and values statements out there, right? But do your everyday standard operating procedures align with the mission and the values?
Mm-hmm. Oh, speaking of which, just a side note on the topic of diversity and planning, I'm meeting today with someone from that company, CEO Action.
CEO Action, I saw that. Yeah. Great, so great.
See what it entails.
I look forward to hearing about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.